Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Mellissa Grady from Cadillac. She's the Chief Marketing Officer. Good to see you, Mellissa. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to have the conversation today.
Yeah, how are things in New York?
Things in New York are great. I feel fall coming, which personally, I love fall, but I'm not a big fan of winter, so I feel the cold coming. I think when I look at what that means this year, it's very interesting, right? Because all the restaurants are outside, which is amazing to have outdoor dining. But as we start to look at winter coming and what that'll mean, it's going to be an interesting, just going on with the unprecedented theme, an unprecedented year. So
Yeah. Personally, I just hold on till summer, till about Thanksgiving, and it's rather shocking to me when it's actually over. So it's no surprise that the auto industry has taken a big hit here in 2020, depending on the manufacturer, sales down anywhere from 10 to 30%. I think GM reported about an $800 million loss for Q2 or first half. And obviously, right, plants were closed, dealerships were closed, everything was just turned upside down on its head. Having been the CEO of AutoWeb, I spent a lot of time in the auto industry, so I'm bullish it'll come back. So I thought we'd dig into just a lot of the trends that are going on and what's happening, both here and maybe in China, Europe and India, not so much. Let's talk about some of the growth markets. But how are things going at Cadillac in terms of now we're going into Q3 and Q4?
yeah, things are going really well. I think going through this year, it's really helped us we had obviously Cadillac is GM's first brand that is going to be all electric. So we're really focusing on an all electric future and our 000 mission. I think this year has really helped us hone that focus a lot. And so as we go into Q4, we're launching the Escalade, the 2021 Escalade, which is
my favorite automobile.
This is the Escalade of Escalades.
I've heard.
And we've been, I think, we've been able to maintain production there. So as you were saying, there were obviously a lot of things that impacted GM overall during the pandemic. I think we got lucky with the launch timing of that vehicle. We've maintained our focus on EV the entire time. We did for Lyric, which is the first entry on with Ultium and our new platform for Cadillac. That launch has not been impacted at all. It did shift when we first started talking about it. So our reveal was supposed to be earlier in the year, and we just had that in August. But I think things are good, knock on wood, and better, I think, than I probably, going into this, none of us really knew what was going to happen or what we were up against. And I think that both like consumer resilience, human spirit resilience, and really auto industry resilience compared to some others has been surprising and good.
Surprising, yeah, both in the new and the used markets. So let's talk about some of the data behind that. So obviously ride sharing almost obliterated in some cities, public transportation. I don't see anyone taking it in Chicago and the other cities I've been to. Rental fleets liquidated, travel, just be happy you're not in that industry, right? Again, they'll all come back, but in very strange ways. So that to me just was like a huge jolt to the system, I think. And it's interesting because on the heels of millennials and Gen X, Y, and Z saying we really don't want to buy cars, we want to share. That's all pivoting too. So I know that's a lot, but maybe you could just sort through all of that and say, what does that mean in terms of short-term trends versus long-term?
I think obviously this being something that's completely new, we don't really know yet what is going to be a short-term versus a long-term trend. I think some of the ways that we as people fundamentally look at things is evolving. I think in the short term, and we're all feeling this, right? I have a lot of friends, just like we were talking about, I'm in New York. I have a lot of friends who previously didn't have, nor did they want a car. And now with more trips out of the city, with people focusing on road trips versus flights, and with people just, there's something very comfortable about your own germs. So when you're in your home and when you're in your car, you know exactly when it's been cleaned, how it's been cleaned, and who's been in it. So those are things that, at least in the short term, I think are really going to stay. I think what's interesting for us to keep an eye on is, some of the migratory patterns out of cities right now. New York occupancy is at all-time lows. You're seeing both residential and commercial really down. People moving out into both more nature type areas and the suburbs. How much is that a short-term versus a long-term thing? As we look at a dispersed workforce and people working from home, we're looking at June of next year. Some companies are saying it's that or it's forever. And so as those conversations start to come into people's families and they're deciding where they're going to live, that has a huge impact on if you're going to have a car or not. So I think the long term on this, there's not really a case study to go back and look at and say, here's how I think this is going to play out in 3 to 5 years. So what we've become very good at this year is being ready for anything, and being there to support people with where they are. But I think, especially a lot of what you were talking to, and as we look at our move into electrification, I think the conversation is definitely right for that. One of the things that personally impacted me was during it was like around April or so, there were studies being done, and the vibrations of the earth were lower because we were all at home.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So
And especially in New York, the mass exodus has been interesting. I mean, personally, we've talked about it with other industry leaders on the show, and it's a cycle. It's almost like 2008. There's a few year cycle after that had nothing to do with health and wellness, and interesting impacts on the auto industry. Can you maybe touch on how it's impacted, luxury versus, the standard stuff? The standard automobiles seem to have more, I don't know, somewhat predictable behavior. But if you look at, Cadillac, BMW, Audi, Mercedes, all these guys, what's the sector looking like compared to maybe the lower tiers?
Yeah, so I think what you saw, and right now there's a shift happening, so it's very hard for me to say what's happening right now. What we definitely saw in the middle of shelter in place and then coming out of that was a lot of the trucks, utility vehicles, things that I think, as especially you have essential workers going, those types of vehicles were very high in demand. The other thing, I think a lot of the financing programs that people had brought a lot of people into the market. We're now starting to see a shift, I think, back to normal, or as we like say, the new normal, right? And someone had said earlier that I really liked, we kept talking about the new normal. First, we had to have the new abnormal, and now we're getting into the new normal. And so as we're getting into that, it's really interesting to start to see what the trends are going to be. We're starting to see things, I think across all of us, really start to pick up into not exactly the same place we were pre, but really getting more regular.
Yeah, and it just seems like, on the luxury side, so car sales are still up. The usage of cars, people aren't using them to commute to work. For instance, you guys are headquarters in the Renaissance Center, which was thankfully a really great program. You guys moved everything back downtown to Detroit, and quite frankly, I think saved it. But a lot of people are avoiding any towers now. Even companies like Salesforce, who pride themselves on big towers in cities, are scattering when they do want to get together in low-rise buildings and things. But the commute's done right for now. But people are using their cars at night and run errands and a lot of weekend getaways, probably because the weather's been nice. So does that you think it's going to impact the whole car buying cycle as well as the used market? Because maybe people are going to keep their cars longer. They're not beating them up as much, driving them every day.
I think it's, again, going to be one of those things that are really interesting to see. I think we think about the vehicles a little differently now. If I even look at myself, and so being in Detroit, I had a daily commute. I'm working from home now, but I've actually, in the past couple of months, put more miles on my car. So, for instance, and again, I think I'm using my own example because it really is, I think, how patterns are shifting. I bought a house in the Poconos on the lake so that we can go relax sometimes, and it's easier to get there now because I can work from anywhere. I have some meetings happening in Detroit, so I'm going to drive to Pennsylvania, and then I'm going to drive to Detroit, and then it's my niece's. So I'm going to drive to Chicago, and then I'm going to drive back. So even though I haven't driven every day for that 30 or so minutes that I was driving, I'm now driving these longer times. I know a lot of people, and as we look at some of the trends as we're looking at domestic travel, a lot of that domestic travel is happening by vehicle. So where you did kind of have this, I'm on a short stint. Here's my 30 minutes in and it's back every day, average commute times. Now what you're really seeing is people who are looking at the vehicle as how you really get from point A to B, whereas before you would have gotten on a plane, or maybe a train or something else. But really, even we've seen, and I don't know again if this will be a longstanding pattern, but people who were on the train every day not really wanting to take the train, driving when they have to come in.
Right.
So
Yeah, there's definitely a resurgence in the family vacation via car this summer. So there'll be some interesting data coming out of there.
that and drive-in movies are the other one, which we
I was going to bring that up. Walmart also kind of jumped in there and did the parking lot thing. So I bet that was a little bit of a spike in certain areas. Did you go to one of those? By the way, you're probably one of the few people that has a car in New York City. So congratulations.
I have 2 cars, and I love it. Yeah, no, it's great. Well, now I would say there's a lot of people in New York who have cars, so it's been interesting. I have not been to a drive-in yet. I am trying to find one that's going to work for my timing, but it's definitely on the radar.
Yeah, there's some interesting data coming out of families closer together this summer, and how the car kind of helped that and bring that together. Let's talk about luxury and tech. It seems to me, having bought a lot of these cars over the years, I've never seen such a time where technology is more important for the luxury cars more than ever. Just even the new entry ones that are still coming to the market, like Genesis and others, it's just like a toy for me. And personalization. So what are your thoughts there? I know the Escalade has got some amazing stuff like in there that I'll probably never get to half the features, right? It's kind of like when you get your new phone, it's like, that's a cool feature. I don't know if I know how to use that one yet.
Yeah, that's actually been one of the things that I've been really thinking about. I'm driving the new Escalade right now, and every day I'm just amazed by that vehicle, absolutely amazed by it. And as I'm experiencing it, I'm thinking about how do we let the consumers of the Escalade understand all of these features, because there is more technology than ever. And we do so much research to make sure that it's exactly what consumers want. And then, you have this like discovery period. And so I'm really looking at how do we accelerate how you discover the technology that's in there. But you're absolutely right. I think the 2 things that are really important right now are technology and personalization. So from a Cadillac perspective, when we look at it from the aspect of it's intuitively yours. So how does the car predict things? Deborah Wall said this one time, and I really want it to be a thing. She said it's pre-sponse. It's not in response to something that you did. It's a pre-sponse to something that you will do. So there's already, I think being in Michigan in the winter, my car, I use my app and I turn on my car before I go outside. By the time I go outside, the car senses what the temperature is. I mean, obviously, right? The car knows that. So it turns on in the winter my heated steering wheel and my heated seats, and it makes my car warm enough for me inside. We have Amazon Alexa integration in our vehicles, which is not only just a lot of fun. If you have an Alexa, you kind of
I've seen it. I've gotten arguments with Alexa in your cars, actually. She doesn't like me.
I was going to say, I'm not sure who I hope won in that situation. But that's
My
really,
girlfriend wasn't happy. She's like, stop talking to her.
oh, that's really funny. I think, I use my Alexa in my car to pre-order my Starbucks.
Nice.
And it's just that kind of integration where it's not just technology for technology's sake, it's technology for making your life better. And then when you come to safety, it's really technology that it makes the driving experience better and safer. So and as we look at where we are today, and the Escalade, I think, is really the pinnacle of our, just honestly, this Escalade as I said before, it's the Cadillac of Escalades. It's the Escalade of Escalades. It's amazing. So you've got this, huge OLED screen, first curve, 38 inches right in front of you. We have 36 speakers in this car, which is interesting. Part of our campaign
You've actually got them right in the headrest, a couple little ones.
yeah,
Crazy.
exactly. Part of the campaign is going to be to help people understand what 36 speakers mean, because we were joking, we were talking about it, advertising 101, you don't talk about a feature, you talk about a benefit. Well, it's really hard to understand the benefit of 36 speakers because it's pretty incredible. So we've got a lot of activations that we're working on that'll really help bring to life what that means. And then
I have one. It's like I leave my house and where Sonos is playing kind of in a mono mode, but decent. And I just go sit in the car. I'm like, that's the difference. It sounds so much better.
yeah,
It's just the
yeah, and
perfect acoustic chamber too.
it really is. And you can play and move around the sound within the vehicle. There's also a feature good for parents where you can either mute the back seat or you can turn it on so you can hear better. So if you need to have a
Can I
quick
mute
conversation,
can I mute the children? Is there a way to technologically? Never mind.
it gets close to that. It gets close to that. So, yeah, I mean, and then just as we look at, and things like the AR HUD and night vision and like just all of this technology that really, you get in the car and it's an experience. I think it was interesting to me because when I first got in the vehicle, I was driving from Detroit to Pennsylvania, and I had meetings until about 3 p.m. and it was a long drive. And I had said to my boyfriend, "Look, I'm gonna drive, and then if I start getting tired, I'm just gonna pull over, and I'll see you tomorrow." And I pulled into Pennsylvania around 11:30, and I did not want to get out of the car. I was so energized. And the other thing that was really interesting is the magnetic ride control, and then the new way
Mm.
that we have this in this vehicle. um, my hands, I have carpal tunnel. And so normally after I'm driving for a while, my hands get kind of numb and they hurt.
So you can take
And
them
there
off
was,
the wheel and everything.
yeah, there was none of that with this vehicle. So I think it's
Wow.
just, you're right. Like the way that technology is bringing the vehicle experience to life, whether you are interested in performance driving or you're interested in some of the farther out technologies like AR, or it's the sound, whatever it is, it's really bringing this enjoyment. And I've always loved cars and I've always loved to drive, but it's really even, I think, exceeding anywhere we've been. And then as we look at our future vehicles, that is just like tenfold where we are today.
Yeah, it makes me think of Revive, our sponsor. We have a health, beauty, and wellness index where we measure pretty much online how consumers are searching for certain information about health and wellness, and it's, as you can guess, through 2020 up anywhere from 200 to 400%, depending on the condition or whether people are interested in skincare or supplements or air. So, at what point does the vehicle become kind of a health and wellness chamber too? Purification of air, products like that. It's like, I mean, at what point? I mean, you can only put so much in these cars, but an Escalade, there's plenty of room to put more things in. But yeah, what do you think about like the health and wellness side, just given what's trending out there now?
Yeah, so that's something that we're really focusing on right now. I think when you look at today, we have, the air filters that are really, from an allergy perspective, from a germ perspective, really good. When you look at, we have massage seats in there. That's like the today. But as we're looking at the future, and as like the trends are, looking at biometrics and, how do all of your electronics talk to each other, we're really looking at that. What role does the car play? And how do we even extend that further? I mean, I think, even when you look at from an emergency situation, which it sounds like maybe there's one outside, when you
Welcome
look
to
at
New
an
York.
emergency situation today, we have Super Cruise. And if someone is driving with Super Cruise is hands-free driving, but the driver needs to be paying attention and looking at what's happening. Today, if you're driving that vehicle and you're not paying attention, then the vehicle will give you some vibrations. It'll flash some lights. It gives you some hints. Hey, you need to pay attention to this. If you don't respond to that, then Super Cruise is going to disengage. And it's not going to keep going because it needs to know that you're looking. If you still don't respond, the vehicle actually will use OnStar and call the call center, and someone will make sure that you're okay. So if you look at that today,
just taking a nap, I'm fine. Yeah.
And then we'll make sure you're awake, and safety first always. So as we then look at, moving forward, what is the further integration of the car in health and wellness? I mean, I think that the possibilities are really phenomenal.
I want the airplane filters. What do they call those? The HEPA, there you go. The ones that they use in airplanes. They're expensive, but the technology is getting better and smaller. That's some of the best recirculated air.
Yes.
So I'm still not ready to get on an airplane. I too have been doing a lot of driving. So so that's fascinating. I don't think most of us, I'll just join in with the consumer crowd here, understand how many sensors are in our cars and how many cameras. It used to be on the outside, like, well, it's like 12 cameras. I'm like, yeah, how many are actually on the inside now, monitoring all this stuff? So you don't have to answer that, but I mean, it's like everyone's looking, everyone's listening. Is there got some privacy and data security issues you guys think about in this connected cars?
Yeah, I think when you look at a company like GM, who safety is probably the most guiding principle that we have as a company. So that extends into everything we do, including data privacy and safety. So there is a lot of, I think, vehicle data that is kept very separate, and we have, it's like of all the companies that I've worked at, and I've worked in insurance, I think the way that GM approaches data and privacy and safety is really like they are at the forefront of not just the automotive industry, but really any industry, as they look at that and keep safety as really overall a key principle for us.
Yeah, and it's come a long way. I mean, my parents' cars didn't have seatbelts, so I'm just happy those were put in.
I know.
I think people actually fought those for a while. Like, well, I'm not wearing that. That's just ridiculous. Like, okay, I will. What else do you think is, we've kind of been focused on the U.S. because, people are concerned about what's going to happen next with, especially when you look at luxury goods and retail, and where you are, a lot of boarded up stores in New York that the doomsdayer guys are saying are never coming back. But I always remind them it's New York, so not that worried long term. But let's jump to a couple other markets. I assume Europe is still going to be soft for a while, but China, every industry, we have had probably 30 industries on this program this year alone. A lot of CEOs talking about the rebound uptick, whether it was revenge buying or whatever buzzword, people threw in for their industry, just bam, it just came right back. Demand. What's going on with cars in China, both luxury and, some of the other sectors you're seeing?
Yeah, China's doing great. And it's been very interesting going through all of this, because obviously China went through COVID first. And it's been really, it was a very different experience there, I think. So there's that we had to layer in, but also there was just, you could watch a lot of what their trajectory was. So when they first went into shelter in place, how consumer behavior shifted, and how things really moved to digital very quickly, digital shopping, digital buying, dealers using technology to FaceTime or something like that. We have something called Cadillac Live here, which gives you,
I've used it. It's pretty good.
It's really fun. I think it's a really fun way to shop for a car. It's like your own personal auto show, but you don't have to get dressed to go. So and they have props. It's really great. So
Didn't your Canadian group kind of come up with that?
they did.
I love field-based innovation. Like, forget corporate, we're doing this.
Yeah, they did, and it's something that we're really expanding. So it's in a studio outside of Toronto, and we have all the vehicles there, and you dial in on basically a one-way video call, and you tell them what car you're interested in, and if you're tall and you want to understand when we say it's class leading headroom in the XC6, what do we mean? Then the guy who's like 6'5" will jump in the back and show you what that means. If you have kids and you want to see how your stroller, but also your golf clubs are going to fit in the back, then we've got those there. We can show you how the seats fold down, like all the different features of everything. It's really fun. So it was something that we had launched already because, we stole from Canada. They launched it last year. We stole it in the US because it was really, really well done. And then we got ready as we saw what was starting to happen and how the Chinese consumers were really shifting. There it was a lot. I think there was a lot on TikTok and some of the other social platforms. So we figured out we're going to have to be ready to enable this shopping process digitally. I think in China, watching that happen and then getting ready here, what for all of us was really good is automotive has just been, from a consumer mindset, automotive tends to be very innovative. Like when you look at, how we buy media, how we are building cars, all these things, and everything when you first concept a car to when it comes to market is such a long period that we always have to be really innovative, right? Otherwise we'd be behind before we started. But consumers still shop for a car the way they have since like 1967. Now the research, instead of when they're asking friends and we're maybe looking in the paper, now they're looking online. There is a big shift to people looking at videos on YouTube, but really that process has stayed basically the same. And this really opened people's minds about shopping more digitally, all the way to, and it's something we've always offered but wasn't really taken up before, we can bring your vehicle for delivery or service to the home. So
there wasn't mass market then, and then there became a health need. And I know when I took AutoWeb public, lead gen was the hottest thing, and it's still the hottest thing. It's like, yeah, but you can move beyond it. So many industries now, their digital platforms have just gone through the roof because of this. And do you see a lot of innovation coming out of dealers, or let's just call it good ideas, like Foley Cadillac here? It was easy for them to kind of deliver cars. They're already kind of a concierge service because of your brand, right? It's a high level experience. It's not like getting a Civic or something.
It was really easy, and I think so. We learned a lot from China and what China was going through. We also learned a lot from our dealers here because they would help us with, you're right. Like we have luxury dealers. It's a luxury experience. They were absolutely ready to sanitize the whole vehicle and then deliver it to a customer's home. Because like I said, it's been something that they've always offered, and that consumers just didn't, it just wasn't their mindset before. But, now there was definitely that shift. So, yeah. And then China's had a great recovery. And we're seeing really, really good sales there.
They love Cadillac over there.
They do. They love Cadillacs.
I'm glad they're buying some American stuff. That's good news.
Yeah.
Mellissa, I really want to thank you for joining us. I usually ask for like words of wisdom, things like that at the end, but I think I'm more interested from your perspective. Just how was it kind of moving into the auto industry? What, just personally, what kind of challenges did you have to? You've been there like 2 years now.
Yeah, I actually started my career in the auto industry.
Came back. Okay.
Yeah, so this was a return. And this is what I'll say. So I started my career in the auto industry. I had worked at Gillette previously. Then I went to grad school and out in the auto industry. I didn't know how, like, I was very early in my career. I didn't know how good I had it. You get to drive all the cars. You have track days. It's one of the biggest purchases people make. I absolutely love automotive. I then worked in a lot of other industries. I was at Motorola working in tech. I was at MetLife working in insurance.
Nice.
I think one of the biggest surprises for me was how much I loved insurance. Also a very emotional purchase for people.
That's a tough one to love. You must have liked the auto insurance sector or something.
It was really interesting. I think at MetLife we were very innovation focused also, which is just something that's where I really like to be, is where you're driving the future, you're innovating, you're doing new things. So coming back to automotive it was great to be back. Not only that, to come into a brand like Cadillac that just really is like, it's the ultimate in American luxury. It's an icon. So to come into a brand like that, a brand that is, so like when you look at Cadillac's history all the way through, you were talking about seatbelts, like we had the first electric starters. We were like first on just like all of these things. Through like OnStar was one of the first things in Cadillac. It's always been a brand of innovation all the way through. And so now to come to this brand when they're innovating again and they're really going to drive what an electric vehicle, what a luxury electric vehicle looks like, and what that should be. It's just a really, really exciting time to be here. I love it.
Yeah, congratulations. Thank you. You've been listening to Mellissa Grady, the CMO of Cadillac, and I look forward to seeing you sometime. Maybe we'll come to the RenCen and do a shoot there someday.
I love it. Sounds great.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.